You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, everybody? I'm DJ Kissel. This is KCSN Update, our daily Chiefs show and podcast here at KC Sports Network. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. Did you know 3 former Chiefs have been selected to the College Football Hall of Fame announced this week? Eric Berry, Derek Johnson, and Jeremy Maclin will all officially be inducted during the 65th National Football Foundation Annual Awards Dinner next December out there in Denver. Pretty special, and congratulations to those 3 former Chiefs. Lucky enough to have covered those guys, have great stories with all those guys that we'll get more into as we get closer to their induction. But congratulations to Eric Berry, Derek Johnson, and Jeremy Maclin. It's Tuesday, so as per usual, I'll be soon joined by the Athletics' Nate Taylor, who will answer our 5 burning questions following the Chiefs' 31-13 win over the Raiders on Saturday. Before we bring on Nate, let us pay some bills here at KCSN for a little quick word from our partner here for KCSN Update, DraftKings. The NFL playoff picture is locked in, and my go-to place for wildcard round action is DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off the road to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can get a no-sweat bet each day of the wildcard round this weekend. Just place any NFL bet of your choice, and if it loses, you'll get a free bet back up to $10. Action's so good, why bet the NFL playoffs anywhere else? Personally, I'll be paying attention to that Buffalo-Miami wildcard game. Can you imagine Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins coming to Arrowhead for the first playoff game at Arrowhead Stadium? Not likely, but man, that would be a fun matchup to watch. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code KCSN. New customers can bet just $5 on the NFL and get $200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, now let's welcome on the Prince of Chiefs content, our pal Nate Taylor from The Athletic. Nate, how are things? How was the trip? How was Chiefs versus Raiders to finish out the regular season, as somebody who was there in the locker room talking with the coaches and players?
Yeah, it was one of the more joyous post-game locker rooms this season. I was the one who decided to fly to Vegas on Saturday, so it was a long day for me, but the team performed, I think, its best game for the regular season at the regular season finale. It's like, wow, from beginning to end, I have no criticisms. I have no notes. Like, this is all very good. This is what you're supposed to do when you're the better team, right? You're just supposed to dominate your division rival. I think the team was motivated, obviously, to get the 1 seed, but Chris Jones, I thought, eloquently let the cat out of the bag, which is we wanted to go 6-0 in the division, and we wanted to prove to everybody one more time before the playoffs start that, they are still the class of the AFC. Now, they all have to prove that, over the next couple weeks here. But it is astonishing to me, BJ, of course, as I've said before on this show, and will continue to say, like, I think the goal is to, I think the benchmark for this team is to get back to the AFC Championship game. All they have to do now is win 1 game, and that could be against either the Miami Dolphins, the Jacksonville Jaguars, or probably the toughest competition would be a 3-peat with the Los Angeles Chargers. So they've accomplished everything that was available to them and their goals for the regular season. And I just didn't necessarily anticipate that. I predicted them to go 12-5, which was the record they had a year ago. I felt that would be good enough to win the division. I didn't think it would be good enough to win the 1 seed, but here they are, having won 14 games. The journey was not as simple as we all thought it would be, or it wasn't as dominant, right? But yet they have proven that they are still capable of, when they are at their best, just absolutely overwhelming a team. And it's not like the Raiders are terrible, but it does show that this team is trending upward at the right time, right before their obviously postseason run.
Yeah, I was curious what the locker room feel was going to be after that game, because they're always so business-like, and they win the division. They kind of let their hair down a little bit, have a little bit, show their personalities a little bit. You get a little bit more of that. This is the kind of, like what you just mentioned, this is the kind of stuff that they were thinking about and holding on to, and internal goals, internal conversation. A lot more of that stuff comes out after performances like that. But Nate, we're going to get into our 5 burning questions now. The first 2 are going to be Chiefs related as far as playoffs, how things are going right now. The next 2 are going to be more future type things. There's a couple of pieces of news that I want to get your thoughts on. And then the last one we'll bring it back to wrap up the show and talk about the playoffs and what you think's what could go down on Wildcard weekend, and previewing some of those matchups while the Chiefs can hang out at home and rest and hopefully get healthy. And speaking of getting healthy, that leads me into my number 1 question, because it's kind of the house cleaning stuff. But when that performance against the Raiders, the only thing that, if you're looking for a negative or you're looking for something that wasn't positive, the injury to Frank Clark. What is your feeling from talking and being around the coaches after the game, and what has been said during media availability thus far as to Frank Clark's possible availability when the Chiefs do play in a couple weeks in the divisional round?
This is I'm so glad you asked this, because I have an answer.
Lovely.
That I think will alleviate some fears and concerns for Chiefs fans. So when a player gets hurt, they are usually not in the locker room. You know, they're obviously continuing to get more treatment. If it's more serious, they could be obviously in the x-ray room. Obviously, you could be preparing to get a surgery or talking to a doctor. So, like, when a player gets injured and you don't see them in the locker room, that is the normal that's the normal procedures, right? I think in Los Angeles, I saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a walking boot, and that's when I realized, oh, he's probably done for the season, and that proves to be the case. With Frank Clark, I saw him in the locker room after the game. And Frank, as you know, BJ, not afraid to talk, even when he's not really required to. Like, if you're an injured player, you're usually not required to talk after games. This is something that I snuck into my article at The Athletic. I'm just going to read it verbatim here because I was so tickled by it. Obviously, it didn't, Frank, I thought, played well in the first quarter and a half before his groin injury. Andy Reid said on Monday that it's a minor groin strain. But basically, this is what I wrote. Quote, in the locker room, Clark said he expects to be available for the Chiefs' first playoff game in the divisional round, which will either be January 1st or January 2nd, which is basically Frank Clark looking at me and being like, I'm good. And as he walked by. So he didn't really show signs of major pain. Obviously, I can't experience what he feels internally, or obviously I'm not a doctor, but he said that he feels fine. Andy Reid sort of backed that up 2 days later, again on Monday. And I think the team was just like, hey, we're getting pressure on Jarrett Stidham, and you are of immense value for the postseason. So there's no need to push it. There's no need to see if you can go back out there. Obviously, I think if it was a playoff game, it might be a different situation, which is something I couldn't ask Frank because, as you know, all those interactions are very quick. And, I'm moving, my head was on a swivel because I was trying to get every guy in the locker room to talk about Arctic Circle too, which is a hilarious phrase that I never thought I was going to ever say.
This is one of my burning questions.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the Kadera Circle is what Kent Swanson called it.
But anyway, Frank should be fine for the divisional round game. And that's the best news, considering he was the one, I guess you could call, significant injury from Saturday's game.
That's good to hear. I saw the quote from Coach Reid after the post-game presser, and it just made me laugh because it's just the way coaches talk about injuries. I put it out on Twitter. It's just like he's got a little groin. He got a little groin. He got a little ankle. Or the worst, and it's not his fault because he's not obviously not a doctor.
No, right. Nor does he want to be.
Coach Reid's notorious for this, and I used to get just eviscerated on social media because I'm not going to change what Coach said, so I'm putting out there exactly what he said. But he'd be like, he sprained his groin. And it's so I'd put out he meant strained, but he would always mix up sprain, strain, and every time I tweeted out Dr. Chow, the active former trainer, would always tell me how bad it was to put that information out there. I was like, you know what? I'm not changing Coach's words. So, anyway, one thing talking about Frank Clark, and I will reiterate this all throughout the playoffs, of what Frank Clark has done in the postseason. He is 5th in NFL postseason history all time in sacks in the postseason with 11. If he has a strong postseason, they play a few games, they play 3 games and win a Super Bowl. He has a sack in each of those games, maybe sack and a half, which he has averaged throughout his career in the playoffs. He could finish this postseason second in NFL history. I don't think he's going to catch Willie McGinnis, who has 16 career postseason sacks. Frank Clark has 11.
Wow.
But when you're thinking in terms of like context of where Frank Clark ranks amongst all-time greats in the postseason, you're talking about players like Von Miller, who has 10 and a half. But Richard Dent, these are guys that Frank Clark has more postseason sacks than guys like Richard Dent, Michael Strahan, Neil Smith, Mike Vrabel, Kevin Green. I mean, DeMarcus Ware, Simeon Rice, like some of the great, like Julius Peppers, Lawrence Taylor. Like, I know it matters how many playoff games they've played in, but that's like where Frank Clark is. So that's why it was my first burning question. And I will always look at these numbers. But Frank Clark, as far as moving up, one more sack, I give him 12 in his postseason career. He'll tie Reggie White. Like that Reggie White tied for 4th. And then 1.5 sacks. They'll tie Terrell Suggs. Then it's Bruce Smith. And then Willie McGinnis has the most in NFL history. NFL postseason history, I should say, with 16 career sacks, obviously with his time with New England. But Nate, thank you for the update on Frank Clark. Let's move on to the second burning question. I think I've asked you a version of this question each week, but always brings out good stuff. Confidence scale in the Chiefs right now from 1 to 10 following that win over the Raiders, where, to your point, to reiterate, you just said what you thought was probably the most complete game in all 3 phases.
Yes.
What's your confidence scale for this team, obviously with the bye week and then going into the divisional round?
Yeah, I think fans should be pretty positive about the team, because Saturday's game was not a playoff game, but it had real implications. It had real stakes. They needed to win that game to get the 1 seed, which means it's not a must win, but it's as close as coach is going to replicate and coach as if it is a playoff game. And they performed well under that setting. Are we going like 10 being the highest of my confidence? Yeah. Okay, so from a scale of 1 to 10, right now I would say a 9, just because the quarterback playing at an MVP level will win the MVP award unless, my colleagues are idiots. So you have that, and he's healthy, right? He'll be even healthier than he was when he played Saturday, because he will have essentially, 14 days off at that point. Their best player on defense had a career year, 15.5 sacks from Chris Jones. Joe Cullen has really unlocked some of the things they're able to do to manipulate other teams' protection schemes, or to find the weak link in the offensive line that Chris can go, sort of exploit. So I feel good about that. I don't know if the secondary is going to be excellent, but like the best thing about what they showed Saturday is, hey, how do you perform with the lead? And they've struggled at times under that setting, but it's like, they double team Devontae Adams. They really neutralized his his ability to wreck the game in their manner from about the second quarter on. And hey, Juan Thornhill got another interception. I think Justin Reeves played really well over the last month and a half. So you should have some confidence that the defense is trending also in an upward manner than what their end of season statistics sort of, perceive or sort of present to an audience. Yeah. And then, of course, the Chiefs have had the worst special teams in the league all season. When you look at EPA, it's been abysmal. But hey, even with back spasms on Wednesday last week, Harrison Butker toughens it out, performs excellent. For a Pro Bowl punter to sort of have to get to another level, which is, hey, let's get a little bit more consistent in these holds. Tommy Townsend did his job, and then he flexed on the Raiders with an excellent punt in the second half. So because they have the 1 seed, because they don't have to play the Bengals and the Bills, which I cannot emphasize enough how important that is, that one of those 2 teams might have to actually do that. The Bengals may have to win against Baltimore, go to Buffalo, beat Buffalo to earn the right to even play Kansas City for the Super Bowl in what would be obviously an AFC Championship rematch. The Chiefs don't have to do that. So that gives me another extra bump on the confidence level. And I know we're going to get to Arctic Circle, but if Andy Reid said, I just got to get these plays off, right? I just got to get Arctic Circle off. I just got to get Leatherneck off, which includes Colin Saunders, one of our favorites. Like, if I just got to get these plays out of here, because, it sets up stuff for the postseason, or we have even better stuff for the postseason, then I have to believe that like this team again is ready for a long postseason run, which again, I have confidence that this team, if you give them one game to get the AFC Championship game at home, they deserve all the benefits of what they've accomplished so far this season. So I can't go 10 out of 10 because whoever they play in the championship game will be their equal, whether it's the Bills or the Bengals. But if that's the case, I do think they'll get there and they'll have obviously a good chance of winning that game to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I bring up a lot of great points. And I think, especially when you talked about special teams in the EPA, I think having Kadarius Toney as the punt returner changes a lot of the confidence that we had early in the year. We've almost completely forgot about the struggles in the punt return. At least I personally have. I'm not as worried now when there's a punt, where there was a stretch there every time they punted the ball. I was like, just get out of the way. Just let it bounce.
Right.
Don't even try to catch it and just get out. Send an extra guy and try to block it each time or something. Put another gunner out there to try to let it bounce in the end zone or something. But yeah, that was the performance that we wanted to see against the Raiders, where we all felt pretty good on everything. They had 6 sacks as a team. Coach Reed even said it after the game that he thought that was, or I don't know, he said he thought it was the best performance, but he praised the safeties with Justin Reed and Juan Thornhill specifically. We were watching the game up at Holiday Distillery, and in the middle of the third quarter, I looked at Craig Stout, and he's like, this is the best game the safeties have played all year. Like the way that Justin Reed was coming up, tackling, making plays in the backfield. Spags was getting aggressive. I joked before the game, I thought it was going to be kind of vanilla. They weren't going to show a lot. He just goes out and runs one of the funnest plays that we've seen Andy Reid run during his time. So can you please give us the backstory on the Arctic Circle? We've all seen it. We all know what it is, but what insider information can you give us about how this play came to be?
Yeah, this is this is why you do the job, right? Because the people in the building, how the organization operates, obviously on the football side. And yeah, it's just like when that play happens, and even if it's, disrupted by a penalty, it's like, man, that's going to be the moment that everybody remembers from this game. So I've already written a story about it. You can go check it out on theathletic.com. I would highly recommend that you go do that because I've written before about a lot of their trick plays, and all of them usually occur in the red zone when they're close to the goal line. It just gives them that extra little bit of an advantage when the space is condensed on the field. So at that point, it's like, well, I'm going to go in the locker room, and I know I have to acknowledge that, they've won the game, they got the 1 seed, but I need to interview all 11 guys who were on the field for this play. And the cool thing about it is this is where coaching is at a higher level, where, again, the coaches are like, these are our plays. These are our concepts. This is what we're trying to do against this opponent this week. And it gets very monogamous and it gets very tedious. But for Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, who I think deserves a lot of credit, to encourage and empower everybody on the team, whether you're an offensive coach or a player on offense, to just come down to the quarterback's room where Andy Reid sort of let it out that it's the laboratory, and just draw something up on the whiteboard, or just write down what you think would be an interesting idea to, again, give us an advantage and to make the game fun. It's supposed to be fun, so that we can continue to innovate while everybody else is just trying to get through week after week to play their best football. My reporting leads me to believe that idea was born from Patrick Mahomes' brain. So in the midst of an MVP season, he's thinking of things like, why don't we do a ring around the rosy dance? Andrew Wiley basically told me that. It's funny that Creed Humphrey told me that they've done 2 to 3 revolutions in practice and realized that's too much because, he sort of joked that, like, yeah, I got dizzy because Pat prolonged it. But you got to see what's possible, which means you got to circle around 2 or 3 times. How does that equate to the game, to the play call, the play clock, I should say. It's so funny to me that, of course, they do this against the Raiders, which involves the victory lap. The last time the Raiders beat the Chiefs, they circled Arrowhead a couple times. So the Chiefs sort of respond by saying, well, we have this play and we haven't shown it, and we're up already. So why don't we just pour salt in this emotional wound for the Raiders and basically circle in front of them when they can't do anything about it. which I thought was fascinating. And look, the play mostly got developed once the Chiefs realized Kadarius Toney was like something. And without Mecole Hardman, because of his abdominal injury, they could actually run this play because they have another comparable player in Kadarius Toney. And it's like, hey, man, we got to bring you up to speed. And so Patrick calls it snow globe. Kelsey basically said that they had convinced the coaching staff to do this right around Christmas time, that, okay, as Andrew Wiley told me, Eric Bieniemy saw us do it in a walkthrough and was like, we are putting this in the playbook. And so that's an anecdote for any NFL team who wants to possibly interview Eric Bieniemy for a head coaching job, because, again, this is a coach empowering the players, and then the coaches corroborating and collaborating with the players on how to polish this ridiculous idea. So Andy Reid calls it Arctic Circle. Andrew Wiley calls it the Circle of Death. There's so many names to this play. It's ridiculous. And, I agree with Dan Orlovsky on the broadcast. Creed Humphrey blew this man's world up so bad that all he could do was flail his arms, and the refs were like, "That looks like holding," so it's holding.
I still have so many questions about this play, but
I can answer all of them for you, BJ.
I just wanted to, is it a sign of things to come? Is it like the new thing in the NFL that the huddles are going to be moving, people are going to be moving around, and just try and, like you said, get that one advantage, not to tear apart something that was fun and be like, how can they use this going forward? But yeah, that was one of those like jaw drops, just start laughing. Can you confirm that is there any connection between the circle and what happened a few years ago with John Gruden and the Raiders taking an extra lap, going a circle around Arrowhead? Because there was some thoughts that this was a response to that. Can you confirm or deny that there was a connection between those two things?
BJ, they had this play in the playbook before Christmas. If I remember correctly, they chose not to show it to the Seattle Seahawks, right? They chose not to show it to the Denver Broncos. Again, as I said,
they're a little close.
True.
True. Probably not a great time to do this, but
true. But hey,
fair. So they saved it for the Raiders. Huh.
And as I've said earlier, Andy Reid's like, we got to get this playoff before the other stuff that we have, which basically Justin Reid confirmed to me. He's like, man, there's so much. Like, that's what, like, one of his, like, probably the best quote in the story is him saying, this is Justin Reid, because of course I wanted to ask some of the defensive players, like, you guys had to be props. You guys had to be like landmarks for like what you think the opposing team might do, which is so weird because it's like completely opposite of what they do.
I want to see that card. I want to see Patrick Mahomes complaining to the defensive back. He's like, that's not what he's going to do. He sees us running around in circles. He's definitely going to go do this other thing. They make sure the scout team gives them the look that they want.
Right.
So yeah,
so Justin Reid said, I don't think the well ever ends in Andy Reid's bag of tricks, which is accurate. And of course, that's sort of amplified and boosted by the creativity of Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce, guys that have come up with their own play designs, and then they have to present it to the coaching staff, and the coaching staff has to obviously tweak it or polish it in a certain manner to get the play to be its most effective. What I'm getting at too, BJ, is no one wanted to say that to me. But also, Andrew Wiley was like, I'm so happy we put this on film, and I'm so happy we did it against the Raiders. So take that as an answer for what it's worth. But obviously I wrote about it in the story because Intel had told me this was intentional. This was incredible. So
it's either intentional or a very happy coincidence that just made it the cherry on top.
Yep. That's basically how I wrote it. That section of the story was like, either it's coincidence or it's a fortuitous timing, or they were accomplishing two things at once, which is not only are we better than you, we're going to show just how much better we are. And also, why don't you watch a circle for a minute? Why don't you watch us do this when you can't do anything, which I think irritated Max Crosby to no end.
I'm sure it did. It annoyed Quinn Minor, the Broncos offensive lineman, so fired up that he felt like talking about it.
And he's on offense. He's not on defense. He's on offense, which I don't understand that sort of part of it. Like he's
Broncos
on
hadn't beat the
offense.
Chiefs since he was in like 12, like he was 12 years old or something. Like I'm sure he's upset. And it was like Derek Wolfe. Like Derek Wolfe used to say like how much he absolutely despised the Chiefs because they could never beat him.
Right.
He's like, Kelsey's cool. That's my guy from there with Cincinnati together. He's like, the rest of those guys, I hate those dudes. But it's funny to bring up like the different iterations that they probably have 4 or 5 different versions of the Arctic Circle, whatever you want to call it, Circle of Death, whatever you want to call that play. The quick note, and then we'll move on to the next question. But I'll never forget a former Chiefs offensive player. I had asked him once about, it was actually that kind of inside tight end screen that they ran. They ran the play against the Raiders to Noah Gray.
Yeah.
That little like inside screen, tunnel screen kind of deal. I was asking about that play because they run we've seen a lot of different versions of that play. There's 17 iterations of that play. And we've probably seen like 8 or 9.
Right.
Like since Andy Reid like developed that play and went back to, they think they had that thing when Alex Smith was quarterback. So they still haven't shown all the different versions of that play. And so to your point, I didn't think they're going to show a lot of the creative stuff. And even though we thought this was creative, it's like, you imagine the counters they have off of some of these things to get them on tape.
And just
love to see
love
to see the teams are sitting in defensive meeting rooms watching them go in circles and having to like strategically talk about who to look at, what personnel group is on the field. They're moving. They're not easy to find. Dude, normal huddle, you know where to look as a defensive player.
Yep, exactly.
Like, oh, Tony's on the field. We got to pay attention to this dude. Or McKinnon in the red zone.
Yes.
We definitely need to pay attention to that dude.
So that's why Andy Reid said it, that's why it works, is because it is there to create confusion and to create mismatches because you're just not in the right leverage spot or you're misaligned into sort of who do you identify as like your guy if it's in man or your area if you're in zone. One of the funniest parts was the Raiders just looking at one another like, and then of course it's a personnel group that they don't use a ton in a formation that they haven't shown all year, which is, hey, Patrick's not going to get the ball, and Travis Kelce is like his personal blocker in this play.
Yeah,
but you know that there's obviously stuff that can just run off of that in and of itself before you get to the RPO action, the pass, basically what Patrick said afterwards was the backside throw or the throw across the field was the last thing that they sort of added to it because they realized as McKinnon becomes more of a prominent character in the red zone, obviously Kelsey's going to gravitationally pull a lot of, a lot of defenders in the back end that all of a sudden, Kadarius Toney's the third option, and again, that's wild.
I thought we've seen it on tape, like how much attention that Kelce and now, to your point, McKinnon are getting. You put them on one side and then throw back to the most shifty, athletic, explosive player on the offense with offensive linemen in front of him, and probably less defenders than are following Kelce and McKinnon around. It's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the third burning question, and this is where we are going to pivot a little bit, start talking a little bit about the future, just because there was some news that came out yesterday regarding a certain former top 10 pick in the NFL draft that Brett Veach and company signed to a reserve futures deal. So John Ross being that player that most football fans will remember the name, one of the fastest players, the combine record, all those kinds of things. Not eligible to play this year. So this has nothing to do with this team. It is beyond a reserve futures deal for the offseason training program and all of that. But thoughts on a very Brett Veach-like move to bring in the former top pick and add another receiver to this group that we've talked about before. Doesn't have a lot of guys under contract beyond this year.
Yeah, so John Ross, former first-round pick. Who was he drafted by, BJ?
Cincy.
Yes. Right? And so this context is interesting because, John Ross has dealt with injuries in the past, I believe, and Cincy just kept doing what the Chiefs do. Which I think is smart and this is even before they had the quarterback, obviously, or as they were getting Joe Burrow through the draft with the number 1 pick. But it's just like, hey, we signed, we drafted John Ross, and he showed flashes at times in his rookie season, but also T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase. Like, if you want to compete in the AFC, go get wide receivers, right? The Chiefs medical staff has done a wonderful job with Kadarius Toney so far. They've taken some mitigated risk with obviously knowing that Patrick Mahomes accentuates the talents of wide receivers already. So with that in mind, and then this extra layer of context, which is it was around this time last year that the team Well, I think it was a little later in the quote unquote offseason or future contracts timing, but it was around this time, I should say, that the team went out and signed Justin Watson. And Justin Watson has been on the team all season. So this is a little bit of, you have a skill set that if you stay healthy, our quarterback can maximize your strengths. With our coaching staff, that will scheme you up to get open. And you're motivated and incentivized to perform at your best because you want to obviously stay in the league and you're on the team with the best quarterback. So that's why John Ross signed with the Chiefs on 2 days ago or Monday, I guess, whatever it was official. And lastly, it's hard to project, again, because of the postseason, it's hard to project where the roster will be from a positional standpoint at the receiver position. Essentially, the only people that are under contract are MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, who's on a rookie deal, and Sky Moore, who's obviously finishing out his rookie season. He has the last rated hand. We'll obviously have an update on him as to whether or not he's going to be available for the postseason. But one would think the way Tyler Lockett played for the Seattle Seahawks last weekend gives, I think, some hope that he might be available because, their hand injury was a little bit different, but Tyler Lockett got back pretty quickly. So with that in mind, now you can just add. They're going to draft a receiver in the draft, guys. Like, I'm just going to say that right now. They're going to take somebody in the draft at the receiver position. It's just a matter of when and how the board sort of, falls or shifts along the draft class, but that's what the Chiefs want to do. And then you're just going to have a number of these guys where you're just going to take not necessarily risks. You're just going to take more shots. It's a chance for them to maximize at the position, have a true competition, see who are the 6 or 5 receivers that will be on the roster for next year. I think the Chiefs want to sign Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm not saying that this move negates one other move later down the road, but because of the success that Justin Watson has shown, and he was more of a veteran than John Ross is right now, you don't think John Ross can run a motion and then just run a wheel route and Patrick Mahomes can't hit him? I don't know what's going to happen with Justin Watson this season because he's obviously a free agent. But what I am saying is, if you have the quarterback and the coaching staff in place and John Ross can stay healthy, he will contribute to the team next year, which is why you do this now before he can really get to free agency. And that's what they did a year ago with Justin Watson, who was probably their most coy sneak attack acquisition that actually helped turn the divisional odds in their favor. I know that sounds wild, but it's true. He cooked J.C. Jackson. He just had the longest play of scrimmage of the entire season against the Las Vegas Raiders. He has been a deep threat that was not supposed to be on the team this year, and they signed him in early February, I think, last year.
You and I should have had more discussions because I'm not going to pat myself on the back for this one, but I had some inside information on this one from years ago. In that the year that Justin Watson was competing, I talked about this before. I talked about when the move happened. That the year Justin Watson was in the Senior Bowl, I was working for the Chiefs. I was down there, and it was the one Senior Bowl that I got to be kind of embedded with the scouts. I was doing a behind the scenes. This is their process. This is what they do. And at the time, it was don't talk about the players that we talk about or grades, all that. Don't be an idiot. I'm
yes,
all right, I understand this. But years later, now that it doesn't matter, I can share at least this one story. The only one I'm going to share from that, what I learned during that trip. But I sat with Brett for probably most of one practice. And I swear to you, Nate, about 75% of the practice, he was waxing poetic on this kid from Western PA named Justin Watson. And the whole time. And so that whole draft, I remember every time I'd write about the wide receivers going into the draft is do I talk about Justin Watson? Because if Brett sees it, he's going to know that I put that in there because I knew him. Yes. He wasn't going to be a highly drafted player or anything. So I don't remember what I put in the content that I was doing for Chiefs.com. But when they signed him, I texted Brett and I was like, you finally got your guy. And he just said something about time. I knew he was the guy that Brett really liked, and he's got a skill set and he's a lot faster, a lot better athlete than he gotten credit for. And I'll never, and going back to John Ross and that decision, it always reminds something that Chris Ballard told me years ago when he was at the Chiefs, as far as what kind of his drafting strategy. And he's as far as drafting, always been very good.
Yep.
In that regard. Say couldn't find a quarterback and a coach, but anyway, what Chris Ballard had said was you give guys chances who have unique traits. It was that phrase, unique traits, is what stood out to me. And like, you give a guy like John Ross an opportunity to come in, prove that he can stay healthy, because he can do something that very few players athletically can do with his speed and what he can do. Similar to even Kadarius Toney, and the way that they can utilize him is that he's got something that they can figure out a way to utilize on the field. Whereas a lot of people, I think, on the outside talk about what players struggle with and what they can't do. Coaches and coordinators and position they look for things that other people can't defend, or they can't stop defensively as far as their athleticism. So John Ross has a unique trait that the Chiefs are bringing in, banking on, stay healthy, learn the offense. And then you've got something that we could, at best, if this works out, can help us move on and play at a high level. But staying with this futures conversation, moving on to our fourth burning question. And I saw this on Chiefs Wire. Our friend Charles Goldman wrote this article on his site there for USA Today. But I talked about the fact that once the regular season was over, the Chiefs 2020 draft class can now officially, those guys can sign extensions going into a season with their final rookie deal. And so my question for you is, of these 5 guys I'm about to mention, because I'm dropping this on you, get a natural reaction. 5 guys are eligible to sign these extensions. I'm going to go through all 5 of them, talk a little bit about their 22 season, just to kind of stall a little bit, give you an opportunity to think through your answer for the listeners here. All right. Number 1, running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Played in 10 games this year, 302 yards, 3 touchdowns. I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, at least based on his rookie deal, the 5th-year option, all that, I don't know. Be surprised if he came back to the Chiefs. I still think Clyde has something. He's going to get a shot somewhere in the league. Don't know if it's going to be with the Chiefs. So taking that answer right off the table, because I know it wasn't with these other guys. Second one, we'll stay on the offensive side. There's 2 offensive players. Offensive tackle, Lucas Niang. He's played 10 snaps this year as a player that really has had a rocky start to his career. Opted out with the COVID year, and he had a big injury. Hasn't worked his way onto the field as Andrew Wiley's pretty much held on to that right tackle spot, even as he at different points at which he struggled. But Lucas Niang is available to hang around, get an extension. And then it's the 3 defensive guys that are most likely, I believe, to be your answer. First one, Willie Gay Jr. in 2022, career high numbers set in terms of tackles with 88, sacks with 2.5, and passes defensed with 8. Probably the most likely one. Cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. His 2022 season, 108 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 11 pass breakups, and L'Jarius Sneed is Pro Football Focus's number 10 ranked corner in the NFL. Again, number 10 in the NFL among cornerbacks that have played at least half their snaps. So I think he was actually like 15th. Cut that off for guys who actually are on the field a lot. Side nugget on this, and separating it like that, there's only 2 teams in the NFL that have 2 cornerbacks ranked in the top 15 of Pro Football Focus's cornerback grades. It's the Kansas City Chiefs, because Trent McDuffie is ranked 15th in the NFL.
He's so good.
15th in the NFL as a mid to late round, first round pick, which is crazy. How many cornerbacks are drafted above him? One of which is number 1 in Sauce Gardner for the New York Jets. And the New York Jets are the other team. It's Sauce Gardner and Michael Carter are the 2 cornerbacks for the Jets that are ranked, I think, 1 in like 12. And the Chiefs have 10 and 15. Again, one of only 2 teams in the NFL alongside the New York Jets to have 2 cornerbacks ranked in the top 15 of Pro Football Focus's grade. So L'Jarius Sneed, a very good one. And then a sneaky, solid option to give, because I don't think be terribly expensive right now and has showed some development, is defensive end Mike Dana. Is open and eligible for a contract. So he's got a career high of 5 sacks this year to help the Chiefs really improve in that area. I'll have a YouTube short that I'm producing later today regarding just the Chiefs defense and the sacks and what that has looked like this year.
Ooh, I look forward to that. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Get dust off the old video editing skills. But of those 5 guys, give me your top 2 most likely, because I think one of them is kind of easy.
Yeah, L'Jarius Sneed is the most logical one. So I'll be fascinated to see how that goes. He's also now been given the responsibility of you travel with usually the best team's receiver. which he did sparingly at times with obviously Devontae Adams last week. So yeah, I'm assuming the Chiefs and Lejeus will have a conversation. Willie Gay is interesting. He is a second-round pick, so you have to keep that in mind. He is now a starter. One side of me says, because of the suspension over the year, because he's still a young player, you might want to see another full season of Willie Gay in the system. On the other side is, if you could somehow get a team-friendly deal for Willie Gay, then that would make probably the best sense for the team standpoint. If I was representing Willie Gay, I think you can get even better, which means you may not come to an agreement. You may play out the final deal of your rookie contract. For stability purposes, because Andrew Wiley is a free agent, it does make some sense to give a logical and, again, reasonable contract extension offer to Lucas Niang, because, again, he's worked with the training staff this entire time. And when healthy last year, he did show that he is capable of being a competent offensive right tackle. We still don't know what the effects of what his play style is going to be coming back from that knee injury. It was quite significant. It's only been a year now since that injury occurred, which I like to remind people all the time. They played the Bengals right after New Year's Day of 2022, and that's when he had the injury before the regular season finale against the Denver Broncos. So with him being back already, that's a good sign. With him being like basically the swing tackle in case something happens in these next few games, that's obviously another benefit for him as well. So he makes the most sense. As I think about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, this is how I can see it playing out, BJ. They will not pick up his fifth-year option. It makes no sense to do that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is with the team. He has been in the facility the last couple weeks. There is a minor chance, and I think he actually helps the team getting the bye week, kind of helps his chances. There's a minor chance he might be in uniform instead of Ronald Jones. But, by the way, Ronald Jones averaged 4.5 yards a carry against the Raiders. So, Ronald Jones is starting to get into a little bit of a rhythm now. He obviously scored a touchdown in the game. So, do you play with the hot hand, or do you obviously bring a guy back from a significant, high ankle injury? So when the season ends, the Chiefs will have meetings at the combine involving Clyde Edwards-Helaire with other teams. They will try to find a best possible solution of trading him. Likely, they will see where he is on the trading block, in essence. What usually happens then is the player comes back for the off-season workouts. It's usually voluntary. I can tell you right now, I'm not sure if Clyde is going to be around for the voluntary portion of OTAs. Then you have mandatory minicamp and training camp. It will behoove both parties that Clyde show flashes in next season's preseason. And then at that point, if there's an injury at the position for another team, it may lend Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be traded right before the start of the regular season. If that does not occur, well, then he is on the final year of his rookie contract with a chance to be a part of the committee with, we assume, Isaiah Pacheco. We assume Jerick McKinnon, probably going to come back on another one-year deal if all goes well for him. So he'll be part of that committee again. But he won't have as many snaps or chances to prove himself in a way similar to what Josh Jacobs just did for the Raiders, which is lead the league in rushing in the contract year after the team denied him the chance of the fifth-year option. If Clyde wants to do that, it would probably serve him best to do it on another team, to have the chance to maximize his opportunities to have a stellar season in the final year of his rookie contract before he hits free agency. I think all parties understand this, and yet if something unforeseen happens in January, and if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is available, he might be on the field to try to contribute to some degree to help the team get back to the Super Bowl. But as you said, BJ, the odds are increasing that he might not be with the Chiefs when the 2023 regular season starts.
You bring up a lot of good stuff there, and we'll quickly move on from Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but it's an interesting point to be made. And if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back on this team and fans that are not fans of him are trying to figure out why, and this is just me playing not devil's advocate, but just the other side of this, is that you need bodies at the running back position. Unless you draft another one and you've got two young guys, the financial part of this comes in because Clyde Edwards-Helaire is only due $2 million next year. His cap hit's like $3.4 million, which in general isn't very much money compared to what you would have to spend on a veteran. Some veteran free agent goes and hits the market. He's going to cost you more than what Clyde Edwards-Helaire is right now. So is the difference of a guy like Ronald Jones. I looked up his contract. He's making $1.25 million for where he is right now. So you go get a Ronald Jones who can be as excited as you want, but has not had an opportunity to play, and Clyde has, and that the team obviously feels that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is significantly better than Ronald Jones when he's healthy. They have made that point and they have proven that to us. So if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back, it's a matter of they didn't think anybody in free agency that would likely cost more was worth the difference in value of what they already have with somebody who's here, who's going to be motivated to come out and do whatever he needs to do in the offseason to get his body right, to come in and perform well. And then it gives him options if he performs well and they draft another guy or they hit on an undrafted free agent, which we've seen before.
Which is likely what they'll do at the position.
Yeah. A John Ross type at running back coming in and being signed and giving him an opportunity. We've seen it with Sharkandrick West. We saw it with Spencer Ware. Those guys both signed reserve future deals, practice squad type players, and they stepped up. And when they got their deals, those were 3-year, $9 million. I'll never forget because they got the exact identical deal, which I don't know if that's ever happened for two players on the same team, but they got 3-year, $9 million deals. So that's what it costs in free agency or to sign those players to extensions at that time. All right. Let's move on to the fifth burning question, and that is bringing it back to the AFC playoffs. Not Chiefs, but let's talk a little wild card weekend again here with Nate Taylor from The Athletic. Nate, let's start with the Buffalo-Miami game. What are your expectations of what could go down in this one?
Is Teddy Bridgewater going to play in this game?
I don't think they're going to tell us until they absolutely have to.
Not,
I mean, obviously that changes a whole lot.
Yeah. By the way,
who's going to play? And I like Skylar Thompson.
God bless Skylar Thompson. Hey,
great dude.
Dolphins legend got us to the playoffs. But
I don't know.
We're asking a lot.
Buffalo.
We're asking a lot. It would serve the Dolphins well if they had a veteran quarterback who's been in some adverse situations like Teddy Bridgewater. The only issue is he really hasn't been able to finish many of the games that he has been available for the Dolphins, serving in that sort of backup role to Tua Tagovailoa. I expect the Bills to win. It's a divisional game. If they don't tackle Raheem Mostert, it is their fault. That is probably what the Dolphins will lean on most. Look, now there's chances for a team to get pressure on Josh Allen. The Bills are still struggling with their own offensive line, although Mitch Morse came back. These recent weeks, I do get the sense that Buffalo obviously is better. I think it probably serves the league best if the Bills and the Bengals meet. Only this time it will be in Buffalo for the divisional round. I have a real feeling, BJ, that has, the more I think about that matchup and obviously everything that occurred, just a week ago, or a little more than a week ago, it really serves up one of the best divisional games that might ever be played. If Chiefs Bills last year in the divisional round is the one that jumps to mind, I think Bills Bengals may serve, may meet it in the echelon of memorable postseason games that weren't even in the championship round. So I think the Bills will win. It's great that the Dolphins got to the postseason. It's unfortunate that their quarterback has had 3 concussions, and is likely not going to play. And that sort of that just sort of disregards their ability to really be most effective. As I look at the Bengals, though, is Lamar Jackson go play? Lord, please.
Let's talk. Let's move on. Let's talk a little Ravens Bengals in this one.
Lord, please let this man play. Come on. I mean, now look, he's in a contract. By the way, this is the real torn tug of war, I think, emotionally going on for Lamar Jackson. $40 million is already on the table. Like it's there. Like 35 million to 40 million is available for you. They gave Deshaun Watson all that money and he played like boo-boo this season. So you're an MVP. I know
a lot of GMs not happy with the Deshaun Watson contract for a lot of reasons.
Can we just disregard?
You followed the NFLPA and the news and the the
which is
collusion stuff. Like it's bad.
It's why I brought it up, because he played like, not only did we give you this, and you had all this time to prepare, and this is how you look. Either that's a coaching malpractice, or that is never happening again, ladies and gentlemen. So I understand that you play for your teammates. It's a team sport. You give them the best chance to win. Obviously, you beat the Bengals earlier this season when Lamar Jackson was healthy. I don't know if he's fully healthy, but if he plays, can they make it a really uncomfortable fourth quarter for the Bengals if Lamar Jackson plays? If he doesn't play, they should not get on the bus. Don't get on the plane. Stay in Baltimore. I don't see how they're going to, like, the firepower that the Bengals possess right now, and obviously the way Joe Burrow is playing, which is also at an MVP level, is terrifying. So I think it's fascinating that, like, from a contract projection, it really doesn't serve Lamar Jackson to play in this game because we know how talented he is when healthy. The only issue he's had is he has not finished the regular season the last 2 years because of injury. But if he plays, can they make it uncomfortable because it is a divisional opponent and they have their quarterback as healthy as he could be at this time of the year? Can they make it uncomfortable for the Bengals in the fourth quarter? I still think the Bengals will win, which will set up in the Chiefs' favor. Bengals, Bills, where they'll have to really go toe-to-toe with one another to have the right to play in the championship game. And lastly, BJ, the
Chargers, Jaguars.
The Jaguars played a real playoff game last week, and there is real experience that you can gain that can serve you. I know the Chargers are probably the better team.
Let's talk about Mike Williams.
I also know.
Let's talk about Mike Williams.
I also know. Go ahead, BJ. Tell them what they did was so ridiculous.
You know, when you're like a fan, you're watching a game and there's no reason, there's no benefit to your top players, especially one who's got a history of injuries, to be on the field when it doesn't matter. When you you're just sitting there and be like, why is he out there?
Yes, you can't gain anything from this game, coach. Come on, coach.
Why is he on the field dealing with the stuff that he's dealing with? Same conversation could be had for Keenan Allen, who was on the field. And then I saw Brendan Staley's explanation afterwards. I hope you might need to change some of the things that he said before he goes to ownership this offseason and explains how a team is picked to win the division for 7 years and never wins. And now they're one key really dangerous offensive. Their one key dangerous offensive weapon is likely not available in the playoffs because you played him at a time that it didn't matter. Tough.
He's gonna try.
Tough look.
He's gonna try. He might be not obviously at his peak condition. Yeah, I just think that the Chargers haven't been here before, at least not this iteration with Justin Herbert. So if Justin Herbert struggles, hey, man, it's the playoffs. This is a different level of the sport. And for as good as you are, if Mike Williams is not there, buddy, it gets real tough. Yeah. And the other Josh Allen is capable of making a game-winning play like he did last week against the Tennessee Titans. So I think it really serves Jacksonville that they went through what they went through last week, that they have a coach who's been to the Super Bowl, that's won the Super Bowl, that can get his guys to perform better in the following week against a coach that, again, has not coached in the postseason as the head coach on a roster that has a lot of expectations. It is grateful to be there, but this is another level now. And in these games, and I'll just being honest, in the games where the competition raises, the Chargers have not performed well.
Right.
Look at a lot of their wins. They are good, but they have not beaten the better echelon teams. Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, Jaguars. Lost to them earlier this season. They played the 49ers. They were a broken team at the time. But, hey, the 49ers didn't have their top two quarterbacks and also lost, basically, in that game. Jimmy Garoppolo was not great. He eventually got hurt. But you get what I'm saying. all this is to say is I think Jacksonville will win. I think Jacksonville will be the
Mhm.
Chiefs' opponent for the divisional round for all the reasons I
That'll be fun.
mentioned earlier. And look,
So,
Jacksonville is getting better. I don't know if I can
Yeah.
say that about the Chargers. I think the Chargers have been pretty stable in terms of what their talent level is. I think because of Trevor Lawrence, because of the coaching staff, because the defense has gotten a lot better over the course of the season, that they'll probably win this game. And it will surprise most of America, but it won't surprise me, BJ, because that team has already been through it. They're the home team. They already beat the Chargers earlier this season. And if we're questioning what Brendan Staley did in week 18, I mean, he better bring it in week 19. So it's a lot more than just the quarterbacks, even though Lawrence and Herbert will get much of the billing. I think team-wise, I have more faith in the home team in Jacksonville. And I think that's probably who the Chiefs will face. And by the way, Chiefs turned the ball over 3 times against the Jacksonville Jaguars and still won. Can't do that.
10.
Can't do that second time around. Can't do that because Jacksonville has only gotten better from that game moving forward.
Yeah, I think it was back in week 10, 27-17 Chiefs won. Patrick Mahomes threw 4 touchdowns, 330 yards, and they turned the ball over. That was a Christian Kirk performance that L'Jarius Sneed is probably going to want another crack at that one with how he played in that one. But the one surprising thing, speaking of surprising things that you just mentioned, you said, I won't be surprised. I'm a little surprised that you're taking the Chargers medical team's word at it was a back contusion for Mike Williams, and he's going to be back on the field. If there's any group that shouldn't get necessarily the benefit of the doubt, that dude may have like a cracked spine for all we know. Like it's a little back contusion. Man. Everybody just leave him alone. Stop asking him questions.
A little back.
He's just got a little back.
Just a little back. It just serves, the entire body, but it's just a little back.
The Chargers absolutely need him to all the points that you just made. Yeah. The Chargers need Mike Williams to go out there and play to win this game. And yeah. Hey. We'll see what happens. Fun, interesting games. Hopefully the quarterback stuff gets figured out. I hope to all the jokes that we make about wanting to beat Buffalo and all of that. Hope Tua doesn't play in this game. He's been IR since Christmas. Things are more important. We'll see about Teddy Bridgewater and then the fighting Skylar Thompsons. But should be a fun matchup. Should be a good, fun weekend of football. We appreciate everybody for hanging out on this episode. If you want some more of your Chiefs fix right now, go and check out The Laboratory. Those guys recorded Monday night. Had some great conversations, not only about John Ross, but everything else going on with the Chiefs following that win over the Raiders and what to look for going forward. So Nate Taylor from The Athletic, what are you working on this week as the Chiefs have a bye? You got a little more time, a little more freedom maybe to write whatever you want. What do you want to tease before we let the good people go?
I'm going to write something about Patrick Mahomes, of course. And then, I think something that I'm going to put together is what is the formula for the Chiefs defense to be at its most effective, most complementary to the offense in the postseason? That's something I'm going to work on. That's going to dig into some stats, a little bit of an anecdote. And also like, it's just weird, man. At some point I've got to write about the special teams, even though they played their best last week. I mean, I think Chiefs fans all know if there's a reason things don't go well, it might be special teams related. So Dave Toub had really interesting comments last week, and it served him well that his unit performed well, but they still deserve their own sort of examination ahead of the postseason.
Yep. All right. Good stuff. Nate Taylor from The Athletic. Appreciate everybody for hanging out. Hit that follow, hit that like and subscribe, depending upon where you're watching. We appreciate everybody for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.